Okay, I just want to do a quick review on a couple things. Sorry I couldn't get this posted earlier. I had some tutoring. Why don't we start with the distributive property? So the distributive property basically states that it doesn't matter whether we multiply our add-ins, numbers that we're adding, first, or add them and then multiply them, because we're going to be multiplying them by the same number. Or subtracting. So let's say we have 4 times, let's see, there we go. Sorry about that, autofocus is a little slow. 4 times 25 minus 4 times 15. So if we sidebar follow our normal order of operations here, we would multiply. So let me set up my normal order of operations here. Order of operations. All right. And I have 4 times 25 minus 4 times 15. So if I follow normal order of operations here, I would do my multiplication before my subtraction. So I do 4 times 25 equals 100 minus 4 times 15, which is 60. And then I come down and I get the answer here, 40. But if I use distributive property, it tells me I can decompose and recompose numbers as long as I follow a couple rules. And I notice that both these numbers, 25 and 15, are being multiplied by 4. And then I'm going to subtract them. So instead, I can rewrite a new problem here. I can do 4 times 25 minus 15. And distributive property is all about doing what's easiest. So 25 minus 15, following my order of operations here, I would come down, and that's 10 times that 4 gives me 40. So that's distributive property. There are other ways of doing it as well. We can do it if we're adding numbers together. So say I have 5 times 16 plus 5 times 14. You notice I chose numbers that I know are going to add nicely. Distributive property is all about choosing what's easiest here. So I could multiply 5 times 16 and then 5 times 14 and then add the result of that. Or I can use the distributive property and come up with a new problem here. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do 5 times 16 plus 14. And that gives me 30 times 5, which is 150. So that's the distributive property. And if I ask to see the distributive property, I want to see something like this. Decomposing, recomposing numbers like that. Next, order of operations. Let's say we have 4 times 3 plus 7 squared plus 10 divided by, let's say, 2. So for order of operations, the easiest way, the best way to do this, to make sure you get it right, is probably to write out the order of operations on the side here. So parentheses, exponents, multiplication or division are together. We do whatever comes first, left to right, and then addition and subtraction are together, whatever comes first, left to right. So please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS, however you like to remember it. And then I can go through and check these off one at a time and see what I have. So I start with parentheses. I do have parentheses, so I'm going to do that first. and I'll bring that down. 3 plus 7 is 10. And then I'll rewrite the rest of the problem down here on this row around it. So 4 times 10 squared plus 10 divided by 2. All right, and I've taken care of my parentheses. Now there's just this one number in here, so it doesn't really count as parentheses now. I just keep these to show that I'm multiplying by 4 here. So cross out my parentheses, that's gone. Do I have any exponents? The answer is yes. So I need to do that next. 10 squared is 100, so 4 times 100. And I rewrite now the rest of the problem plus 10 divided by 2. And you'll notice I'm only attacking one thing at a time just to make sure I get everything right. It's not a race, it's just about getting the right answer here. Next, I look to see if I have any multiplication or division. I have multiplication here, and I have division here. And I move left to right, so I'll start with my multiplication. 4 times 100 is 400, plus 10 divided by 2, so I write out the rest of my problem. So I don't have any more multiplication. Done with that. Do I have any division? The answer is yes. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I bring down the rest of my problem here. 400 plus 5. Do I have any addition? Yes, I do. I do that next because my division's done. And my answer there is 405, no subtraction. So I absolutely was stopping to talk throughout, but even though it looks like a lot of work, it's not that much. It's pretty easy, and I've guaranteed that I will get the right answer. Okay, the last piece here is doing mental math. And for doing mental math, it's pretty easy. We actually just need to think about operating, I'm sorry, let's make that a multiplication sign. There we go. We need to think about operating with expanded numbers. So when we're doing mental math, a lot of times what we're actually doing is the distributive property. So we can look at this number 47. We can break it up into two numbers. The numbers we can break it up into its expanded form are 40 and 7. So 40 plus 7. So instead of doing 47 times 3, I'll actually do 40 times 3 plus 7 times 3. So you can see I still have this problem is the same as this problem. I've just used the distributive property to split it up here. Because you can see the 40 here and the 7 here, the expanded form. And then the important part here is you notice that I'm multiplying both the 40 and the 7 by 3, which is the same thing as multiplying 47 by 3. And so to do that, 3 times 40 is 120, plus 3 times 7, which is 21, and I add those together, and I get 141. Now, obviously I want to do this in my head, but I wanted to show you the process first. So let's try another one here. Let's say that we have 16 times 8. So in order to do this in my head, I'm going to take 16 and I'm going to split it up into 10 and 6. I multiply 8 times 10 and I get 80, and I hold that in the back of my mind, and then I do 8 times 6, and that's 48. I add 48 and 80 together, and I get 128. Now this works with division as well. Say I have the number 449, and I want to divide that by 2. There's another way to do this using compensation, but I'm going to show you the mental math way based on the distributive property. What if I break this up into its expanded form? It would be 400 plus 40 plus 9. So instead of dividing 449 by 2, I'll divide each one of these expanded numbers that I just said in my head by 2. So if I take 400 and divide it by 2, I get 200. And I'll hold that in my mind. If I take 40 and divide it by 2, I get 20. So now I have 220. And if I take 9 and divide it by 2, I have 4 5/10. So now I have 224 5/10. So 400 divided by 2 is 200, 40 divided by 2 is 20, 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. So that's mental math. One more I'll show you real quick. If I take 3,600 and I subtract 599, there is a way to do this mentally too. 599 is really close to 600, so why don't we just pretend that this is 600. Now, if I'm taking 600 away from 3,000, I know I'm going to be left with 3,000. And because I only subtracted 599, I actually have one more left here, right? So instead of it being 3,000, that 1, which is the difference between 600 and 599, I'll add back in at the end. So my answer is 3,001, and to check it to make sure I'm right, I can just add this 1 back here. So 1 plus 9, right, gives me a 10, 0, carry by 1, 10, 0, carry by 1. So I have 600, right, and it works, right? These two together give me 3,600. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Once again, sorry I couldn't get this up earlier, but I hope it helps.